It's hello from Lanark. It's a town with a lot of history.
I was actually visiting Lanark for a football game. Lanark United are playing the West of Scotland League. However, I wanted to also see the connection with William Wallace, the great Scottish patriot. There's even a shop there. There's a Wallace house, which is really interesting information about the connection with William Wallace. And there's a couple of murals there. And as I was looking at this mural, I went a distance. I said, what's that on the gable end of a house? Is it a dog? It's a dog. You could easily walk past this, but what is a dog doing at the gable end of a house? A really interesting story.
Yeah, officially known as Deacon MacDonald's dog. It's known to the locals as a Girnin Dug.
So why is it a Girnin Dug? Why is it facing that way? What's the story behind it?
Well, apparently, Deacon John MacDonald, he was Deacon of the dyer's trade, wanted to build a house.
Now, Deacon MacDonald was a successful man, and at that time, desirable place to live was Castlegate. He identified a gap site, and he wanted to build a house.
And this was in the 1800s, and he applied to the Lanark Council to build a house in a gap site here.
Now, that house is 15 Castlegate, which is still there. The building next door was Veer House. Now, that's a modern building, so Veer House is now demolished. This house was occupied by Miss Ingalls, whose family lived there for years.
And Miss Ingalls didn't want a house built there, so she objected to it, but the Lanark Council gave John MacDonald permission to build a house there.
Because that building, which has replaced Veer House, is now flush with the building. But you have to imagine there would have been a gap there and a gable window where Miss Ingalls used to sit with a cup of tea watching the world go by. So she would be able to see the construction of the building going on. Well, John MacDonald was overseeing construction, and he was always seen with a black and white dog called Camp. Now, apparently, on one occasion, Miss Ingalls was knocked over by Camp as it pursued a cat. Well as objecting to the house being built, she must have been absolutely fuming. On one occasion, after briefly going away, John MacDonald came back to the house.
Well, he found his dog dead, and it subsequently realised it had been poisoned. Of course, the main suspect was Miss Ingalls, but he didn't have any proof, of course. He didn't, no witnesses. But he suspected as Miss Ingalls was to blame. So he commissioned a stonemason to create
a life-size statue of a dog. It is not just that, it's a position of the dog. It's looking right over. And remember, that gable window would be looking out. The dog could see right into that window.
The same window that Miss Ingalls used to enjoy having a cup of tea, watching the world go by.
But the story doesn't end there. Seemingly, years later, the window was boarded up. The same window that the dog was sneering into. Now, whether or not it was a guilt of Miss Ingalls, nobody really knows. And of course, then the house was demolished. But the story doesn't end there. Some say the house was haunted by the dog. My final into the story is that seemingly about 30 years ago, a new owner bought the property and he painted the dog polka dot colours. Well, there was bedlam, outrage in the town. He was forced to paint the dog to black and white again.
So there you go, the story of the Girnin Dug.